I'm Tom Baughn. I'm a master gardener here in Fauquier and Rappahannock counties. I actually became a master gardener in 2003 up in Maryland, where I lived at the time, and then I moved down here and created my gardens and everything. Today I wanted to talk to you about extending the growing season for vegetable gardens. A lot of times you have to wait until March or to Mother's Day in May and before you plant some crops and everything. And everybody's always eager to get stuff in the ground because it's been cold and ugly for so long and everything. They're just really eager, but put it out too early, of course, it's going to freeze it or frost will hurt it. So this is one way to get around that. You can actually start things much earlier than Mother's Day. This is called row cover. This is one example of one thing you can do. The row cover is basically a fabric. You can see it's translucent and it will let in the light and the rain. So, but you may want to have some sort of irrigation in there as well sometimes for other times when it's dry and it hasn't been raining much. The first example I wanted to show you was this one over here, which is the floating row cover. Basically there's no hoop to support it or anything, but you can put a plant in there that's pretty robust and it'll actually push the fabric up and keep it up during the season. So sometimes you can just do that, or if you want to do the hoops, you can go out and buy a big roll of heavy gauge wire and cut your own hoops and put them in, or you can buy the pre-made kind, which are a good bit more expensive, of course, to do that. Now, one thing about the wind will be a problem a lot of times, so you got to learn how to anchor this. You see how at the end we've collected the fabric and held it down with some stones and everything. The way I've got this though is, you can see here in the middle I put a piece of conduit and rebar in there to hold it down in the middle. That stabilizes it. And then on the edges I do the same thing, conduit and rebar, and then roll the fabric up in it. And then when I want to work in here, all I have to do is pick it up, roll it over, and voila, I have my plants. This is tatsoi that I just transplanted in here about a week ago. So that's the idea, and you can see my soaker hose there too. Okay, so when you're done, put it back over here. Now the row cover, a little bit. The row cover will keep the temperature in there for your plants a good 5 to 10 degrees warmer than the outside air. So this is how you can grow things in here earlier than if you didn't have the row cover. This is called a low tunnel, and of course it's all relative, but a high tunnel typically you can walk through. So a low tunnel, unless you're really young or short, you can't walk through this very easily. I will cover this at some point as well, and can grow things, but you can start plants in here and keep them covered. This is Portuguese kale. I had it growing in here all winter long. Was able to harvest some of it. Typically, and there's two different kinds of plants, garden or vegetable plants, cool weather and warm weather. Cool weather are things like spinach, lettuce, and that sort of thing. Kale's another one that will grow very well, beets. They'll slow down in growing, but they'll keep growing usually, especially if you have some cover over here that keeps them a little warmer. So this is another way to extend your growing season. And you can see in here too, I've got older plants that went through the winter that are now, I've been harvesting probably another week or 2 weeks on those before they're done. But the little ones are coming on and we'll replace them. In a couple of weeks they'll be ready to start harvesting too. And the other plant you see in there are some beets that overwintered during the winter and stayed alive, but didn't grow very much again, but survived the winter, of course. Now another way, this is cheating a little bit more. You can do what are called little miniature greenhouses. Normally warm weather tomato plants you don't put out until after Mother's Day. I put these out a week ago, and you can, so that's a full month early. You can bet your last dollar if you want to that you're going to probably have the first tomatoes in the area if you do it this way. Because basically what it does, this keeps it warm. Take the cap off, A lot of people forget to mention that, and you always wonder, well, leave it on or not. Take it off. I know it lets the air out, but this keeps the ground warm so much that this is kind of a miniature greenhouse again. These are tomato plants in here, and so I've got them out a month earlier than normal, and I've done quite well with them this way. And in case you're wondering, I'm not an alcoholic. I make a killer rum apple butter, and that's why I've got all the rum bottles. So this is another way. Even your warm weather crops, you can start those and put them outside earlier so they get a jump on the season. And you can do succession planting this way too. Normally what you do is, if you're going to put out 8 tomato plants, start 2 maybe as seedlings, and then 2 weeks later start 2 more, and then 2 more and 2 more until you get all 8. That way your tomatoes aren't all ripe at the same time and you've got more tomatoes than you can possibly eat. Way that I wanted to demonstrate that you can use to extend your garden season is a cold frame. This takes a little bit more work, and this one's a good bit more elaborate. You can make them a lot simpler. But I grow cilantro in here all winter long. It's a cool weather crop, of course. It likes the cooler weather, so it's okay. And with protection, it'll keep growing more so than if it was just growing out here on the ground. You can see kind of in the gravel around here, there's several cilantro plants that have just seeded out and grown on their own, but during the winter they stop growing. They kind of flatten out, turn a dark green, a little bit brown, and stop growing and everything outside. But in here, of course, it'll keep growing, and you can see how much I've grown here. So this is the last way that you can extend your season. I will mention though about the row cover fabric, that just like it keeps it warmer in the cool weather, it's going to keep it hotter in the hot season. So again, that same thing holds. It's going to be a good 10 degrees warmer under that row cover during the summer. So you can't obviously grow cool weather crops in there. They just won't grow. They just die or grow very little and quit. Just keep in mind that you want to plant some sort of vegetable in there that can tolerate the extra heat, because you'll normally want to keep the row cover on because that protects it from insects to a large extent. Won't keep them all out, but it'll help them a lot, keep a lot of the bugs down. Okay, I think that's it.